Let's go ahead and let's get started on day 4 of SOC core skills. Now, when we left off last class, we were talking about the core event IDs that are required to be able to identify a lot of different types of attacks that are out there. And these are them. You're looking at general event IDs for log on, log off. You have ACL objects, process launch and usage. You have a number of them that are utilized. There we go. You have a number of them that are utilized for a variety of different attacks. But once again, the problem with looking at this is it's not everything. And a lot of the SIM vendors that are out there today, they really like to get you to log absolutely everything. And that kind of brings up a question, right? So if you're looking at a SIM that's doing event log analysis and getting all these logs off your systems, what percentage of the logs do you all think is written in such a way that it has an alert or a detect or a report written on that event log? What percentage do you think? Report, 30 would be high. Yep, you download the Sides Wanderer over in resources. It's usually less than 10%. In most organizations, it's probably around 5%. So that means that organizations are capturing like 90% of the logs that they have nothing written for them. There's no alerts, there's no detects, there's no reporting, there's no nothing with these logs. And this isn't like a problem that you look at and it's like, well, that's a handful of organizations. It's across the board. Even at Black Hills Information Security in our Security Operations Center, we have a series of scripts that go through on a regular basis that get all of the logs and they say, well, do we have any alerts or anything that generates tickets in Jira? Do we have any reporting in Elastic? And it kicks out and it says, these are the logs we have absolutely nothing on. And the vast majority of the time, the logs are garbage. They just don't do anything. They're like really crappy system logs that don't tell you at all about what is actually going on. So then my team goes in and prunes those logs back. Kind of giving you a little bit of what this can mean. In our SIM, we're using Elastic. And the last time that we went through and did a little bit of pruning on our logs, it cut back something like 33% of the total logs that we were ingesting in our SIM. That translates to real money. So looking at this, we've got to change the game. We got to stop looking at it because right now, if you're looking at the way the industry is, how much do you log? A lot of organizations log a lot of data. What do you log from? Well, usually everything. And that's a good thing. I think you should be logging from absolutely everything. But whenever it comes to the types of logs you should be logging, that usually comes from the vendors themselves. So let's go back up to the beginning of this entire thing. If the vendors are telling you to log absolutely everything, how do the vendors price out their products? How do vendors price out their products? Anyone know? Yeah, they pay you based on storage. So think about this. You have vendors telling you to log everything or events per second. They get paid based on how much you log. And they have this really perverse self-interest in driving you to log more than you actually need in your detects. Do you see how that's a problem in this industry? It's a huge issue. And whenever it comes to actually getting the logs that mean something, the logs that are actually valued, a lot of times they aren't even on. So we were playing with Deep Blue CLI yesterday or 2 days ago, and it relied on command line logging and PowerShell logging. Now, if you're getting started in computer security, you would think mistakenly that you have like super easy peasy capability to just turn on logging for command line logging. Turns out that's not true. So I want to go through, like, this is just kind of a case study of what it takes to actually get logs that provide value to you and the security team. The first thing you do is you have to have audit process creation auditing enabled. You have to have enabled in your policy settings to include command line and process creation events. You have this warning that pops up that says when you use advanced audit policy configuration settings, you need to confirm that these settings are not overwritten by the basic audit policy settings. Now, if you're looking at this and you're thinking to yourself, this seems insane and weird, hold on to your hats. It gets worse because you got to check the maximum log file size because by default, it's really, really small and it's just going to overrun it, right? Then to see the effects of this update, you will need to enable two policy settings: admin templates, system audit process creation. You're also going to need to enable policies, Windows, security, advanced audit, detailed tracking. And oh, by the way, the second setting will more than likely be overwritten because Microsoft tells us when you use advanced audit policy configuration settings, you need to confirm that these settings are not overwritten by basic audit policy settings. But Event ID 4719 is logged when the settings are overwritten. So it generates a log whenever you overwrite those logs. So that's great. Then you need to go through and you need to define the domain policy, computer security, local security audit policies to be enabled as well. And when it's done, magically, you get event logs. So you have to go to like 6 places, 6 configuration settings to configure your Windows system to the point where it's logging what you want, which is command line invocation. And when it actually is logging, it's awesome, right? You get the process name, you get the process command, you get the full command line, you get the path. This is great. This is the stuff that you would think if you sat down with somebody that just graduated or made it through their freshman year in computer security and said, hey, what do you think Windows system should log? They would say, well, I think that they should log whenever processes execute and where those processes execute from, with the parent process and who actually ran it. Well, no, Sparky, it's not going to log any of that default. It's going to log thousands of other things that you have no idea what it actually does. Cheerio. No, it literally now is logging what you are looking for. PowerShell is better, but not. I know that that seems weird, but in PowerShell, rather than having to go to a bunch of group policy configuration settings, it actually drops down into these commands. You have to run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different commands in PowerShell to enable PowerShell logging. Now, on the plus side, you can totally add that into a profile.ps1 file and just execute the script on all of your different systems. You can do that. That's awesome. You can do that. But look at all the things you have to do. It's not just like enable PowerShell logging set to 1, enable command line logging set to 1, and then that's it. And now we're actually getting things that are value in the command line logging that we should have had, I don't know, all the way back in 2000 when we were just getting started in the wily world of computer security. But now we have PowerShell logs, right? If we're looking at the PowerShell logs, it says this is the full command line execution, which once again is incredibly powerful for tools like Deep Blue and Deep White CLI. Sysmon, on the other hand, super duper easy to install, like crazy easy to install. Like you run one command with a config from like Olaf Hartog, Sysmon Modular, or Swift on Security, and it's on. And when you get those logs, they look like this. They're under Sysmon operational, but look at these beautiful logs. Look at these beautiful logs, right? We get when it actually executed, specifically with UTOC time. Oh, you know someone's nerdy whenever their logs goes off UTOC. The process GUID, process ID, the image, the file version, the description, the product name, the company, the original file name, the command line invocation, the directory, who ran it, the login GUID, the terminal session ID, integrity level, whatever the hell that is, the freaking hashes of that executable, the parent process ID, the parent process execution. That's a spicy meatball, as I just offended everyone who's Italian, or anybody who has good taste, right? But that's what we're looking for, right? And the thing that sucks is when you go to companies and we do pen testing like a lot, and we say, you know what you need to do? You need to enable Sysmon. You need to enable command line logging. You need to enable PowerShell logging. They're basically like, that's more. I don't know. We're already logging a lot of garbage that has no value whatsoever to detect any of the attacks that are running in our environment. But boy, actually turning on logging for the things that matter, that seems hard. No, this is the stuff. at a minimum that your organization should have. You can also push it out with group policy. Does Sysmon catch all that without enabling command line logging? Yes, it does, Kelly Sayer. Yes, it does. So you don't have to turn on command line logging, don't have to turn on PowerShell logging. You just do this with one command and bam, it's done. Easy, easy, easy. You can get the logs off of the systems with tools like WinLogBeat, Windows Event Collection, Windows Event Forwarding. There's a number of different tools and utilities, depending on your SIM, that have the ability to actually pull those logs off of the environment. So you're trying to get a job in corporate America. Welcome to corporate America. And you didn't get the job because you didn't have any experience in their specific SIM. Has that happened, or is that something similar to that happened where, oh yeah, you have experience, but you don't have experience in the specific tool that we use? Has that happened to anybody? Happens all the time. Well, turns out if you learn Sigma, Sigma is like a Rosetta Stone. You can write your signatures in Sigma and then automatically convert them into ArcSight, Splunk, all of these other tools out there as well. So we got a SOC analyst that's kind of coming up with, we killed YouTube. I think our YouTube channel just died. Yep. Ryan. Where did Ryan go? Megan? Yuri? Anybody? Oh my God, am I on my own here?
No, you're not on your own. But I think Ryan is over in the BHIS webcast. Yuri, are you still around?
All right. So here's what we're going to do, folks. We're going to do a lab.
Yeah.
We're going to jump to a lab. Do this lab. And let me post that lab really, really quickly. Although I lost where, oh, it's over here. All right, we're going to do a quick lab, everybody. We're going to do the Sysmon lab, and we're going to do a Sysmon lab, and we're going to get everything working back again. So there we go. All right, and I'm going to share this inside of the Zoom and Discord people. All right, everybody, this is a lab where we get to play with Sysmon. It's very similar to what we did with the Windows command line lab, where we were detecting malware, but we're running malware on our Windows computer system. But this time, we're looking at that malware through the lens of Sysmon and proper logging. This lab is going to take us, let's just give it a good 30 minutes. We will resume at quarter till. And then I will do the walkthrough. So we'll resume at 10:45 Mountain, 12:45 Eastern, just something 45 wherever you are. And we will do the walkthrough. So sit tight, folks, on the Zoom. We will get you back up and running. Had to redo the YouTube link. Sorry for those of you that are out on the YouTubes, but we got it all taken care of. I appreciate your patience. But hey, we have this ability so that we can quickly jump in and do labs, because if there's one thing this class needed, it was more labs. All right. Once again, I want to do a shout out to our sponsors. If you haven't yet, could you please go say thank you to SAS Alerts on Twitter? Could you please go say thank you to Arnie Bellini on LinkedIn? And then the other vendor that we have that we brought in was Barricade Cyber Solutions. I'm spending a lot of time trying to help other security firms. This is actually something Dave Kennedy and I are working on in conjunction with each other. Dave and I in Trusted Sec and BHIS, we compete against each other. But at the exact same time, we recognize that small boutique pen testing firms are a very rare and endangered species. It's very difficult for small firms to get up and running in this world. And what we are trying to do is trying to support as many of these different companies and getting up and running as we possibly can. So Barricade is a great company. You also have Red Siege as a great company. They're also one of the people that sponsor us, and they're instructors as well. So please do me a favor and let's support the small guys out there. All right, so I'm going to walk through this lab, and then we're going to take a quick break, jump into my VM. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to disable the AV. Now, the reason why we're disabling AV is because, once again, the goal of this lab is not to show here's how you hack a Windows computer system. The goal of this lab is how can we get the proper logging to get the information we need to be able to detect attacks. Gave me angry red errors, and that means it worked, because the instruction said, if you see angry red errors, it's working. So I'm going to just simply jump into my Linux system. We're going to run ifconfig. in my Linux system. We're going to do ifconfig, get my IP address. I'm going to become root, sudo su space minus, like so, ADHD, like so. All right, so I've got my IP address. We've got that set up. Now we're going to make some malware. Like I said, one of the joys in my life is being here whenever you all create your first malware. It's like watching a baby make their first steps. It's like watching a baby orca, kill their first sea lion. It's just absolutely a magical moment, and I'm really happy that I was here for you all, so I could be part of that journey with you in what we do in creating malware. Because I really do think the world needs more malware. I think the world needs more hackers. And the reason why I think the world needs more hackers is because things are only fragile until they break. Once they get broken, they get stronger. So through hacking and security assessments, everything gets better in the industry. All right, so my malware has been created. CD into temp. I look at the malware, there it is, which funny, there's a tool in there called Orca install. It's almost like I've taught this class multiple times. Who knew? I'm going to move my malware over to my Windows computer system like so. There we are. And then we are going to open up MSF console. All right. Now, once again, just kind of reiterating what we covered in the last class where we started with this. This is just literally straight up a control server. So we're creating a server that allows us to do the command and control of the malware that we have created. So we're going to use exploit multi-handler. Same thing we did earlier. None of this should be new to anybody. But what is new is what we can log from Sysmon, which is magical. All right, there we go. And then we're going to set the lhost to be my IP address, like so. Some people are wondering, why don't I do the ETH0 trick? That's because on many Linux systems, they don't do ETH0. It becomes ENS something, something, something stupid, which actually in the long run makes it more difficult, which I know sounds weird, but trust me, it is. Some things they're doing in Linux I don't like. All right, so we've got exploit. Now let's go run our malware here. Let's CD into tools and let's run trust me. All right, so we've got our malware has been executed. We can see I've got our interpreter session running. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Now let's actually go through and look at the event logs that are created associated with this. We're going to do a search for EVNT viewer. And then we're going to load up the Sysmon operational logs. We go to application and service logs. Wait for it. Wait for it. There we go. Go to Microsoft, Windows, and then all the way down to Sysmon. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. All right. And there we get to Sysmon, operational. And now we've got our logs. All right, so let's open this up a little bit. Let it breathe. 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 Sysmon brings events to me. Let it breathe. All right. So we have our processes. There we go. Have that. Make this a little bit bigger. All right. There's our MMC. There we go. So cmd.exe. You can see that we invoked cmd.exe. We can see the user. We can see all of that stuff, which is just super cool. And there is our trustme.exe file. And all of the stuff that you would need to do as an investigation and SOC analyst is right there. It's just right there waiting for you, which is so cool. So I hope that when you're looking at it, it's just so cool. When you're working in a SOC, I know you come in and you get started with these things, and it's very difficult to say, okay, this is what we need to be pulling into the SOC to get proper alerting and logging, but you can do that. And giving any SOC or any, any company that you're working from, kind of that recommendation right out of the gate is awesome. How did Sysmon logs get loaded in the VM? Because Sysmon is running in the VM. And in the labs, we give you the instructions for running Sysmon. It's literally just Sysmon, and then you accept the EULA and give it a config. And that's it. Literally one command. That's it. How to generate Windows security event IDs? Are any automated scripts available? Yes, you can actually generate like events with specific event IDs from the command line, but some of those event IDs are in fact reserved. All right, so when you're looking at event IDs, the cool tool that I've been demonstrating, or not demonstrating, but screenshotting throughout this entire class is a tool called Logon Tracer. And Logon Tracer with all the pretty graphs is 6 event IDs. That's it. Successful login, logon failure, Kerberos authentication, service ticket grant, NTLM authentication, and assign special privileges. And it does all of that awesome thing. So let's say that something like this happens. This is kind of hearkening back to a lab that we've already done. You have somebody that's logging into 232 accounts. We need to investigate that. We can jump in and we can see which workstation is authenticating to every single one of those other workstations as well. And we already did enterprise log analysis, so we good there. So now we're going to talk a little bit about endpoint protection analysis. And what I want to do with this lab is kind of setting the stage. We're going to jump into a lab and then we're going to talk about how that fits into the overall scheme of evaluating whether or not our environment is working properly. So let's go ahead and let's jump into yet another lab. This lab that we're going to work on is the Deep Blue CLI lab, not Deep Blue CLI. Oh, that is absolutely wrong. It is the crap. If I could find it, I could think it would be awesome. Where is it? Oh, here we go. Atomic Red Team and Blue Spawn lab right here. So this is the lab that we're going to be doing. I'm going to throw this into the YouTube folks. I'm going to throw this into our folks here that are in the Discord with us. And this is going to kind of help set the stage to kind of let you know how we need to constantly be evaluating our security products. Now, the goal of this lab is twofold. The first goal of this lab is to introduce you to something called Atomic Red Team and how Atomic Red Team can do security testing of your environment and all of your security telemetry. It's awesome. Great coverage of the MITRE ATT&CK technique matrix. The other thing that we're doing with this lab is we're showing you how to evaluate a security product. The product that we're evaluating is a tool called Blue Spawn. It is not a full commercial EDR. It is an open source college project that was created. So the goal of this lab isn't like, hey, you should be running Blue Spawn in your environment, because that would be crazy. But Blue Spawn steps up and runs as a really good stand-in for a commercial EDR product. So don't look at this as Blue Spawn is the tool to use. We're evaluating what Blue Spawn can detect. The same methodology should be used for any EDR product that you have in your environment. So you're going to go ahead and run Blue Spawn, and then you're going to run a series of attacks against your system and see what Blue Spawn can detect. All right, so that's it. This is the lab. Let's get rolling. And we're going to give you all, we're up to and through the break, and I will resume at 30 minutes after. So at 30 after, we will resume instruction, everybody. So let's do it. All righty, here we go. Got some labs. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is yet again, make sure that our antivirus is disabled. Yet again, the point of this lab isn't here's how you bypass antivirus. It's basically how do we evaluate our EDR product? Beautiful, beautiful red errors means it is disabled, which is great. We're going to CD into tools, and we are going to start Blue Spawn. As if the Blue Spawn Mining Company won't save me. Who's gonna save me? All right, so Blue Spawn client. Now, notice that whenever I am running this, you should be able to display. Let me try to stop share and restart share. There we go. Just reshared. Can you see it?
Yeah, good now, boss.
We're good now? Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So notice that whenever I'm running Bluespawn, it comes back and it says it's running in monitor mode. Whenever you're evaluating your EDR to see how well it works, you want to run your EDR in something called alerting non-blocking mode. And what that does is it allows things to execute, but it'll tell you what it would have done. Okay. It's kind of like that annoying a-hole uncle that you have where everything you do in life, they're like, well, you know what I would have done in your situation because no one effing cares what they think. Sorry. Probably got a little bit too personal there. Yeah, let's roll that one back. But basically, what we're doing is we're trying to see what the tool would have done. Otherwise, most of your EDR tools would have just killed all PowerShell execution right at the start. But we aren't interested in it shutting down the PowerShell. We're interested in is what would it have detected when that PowerShell executed. So we're going to have it run in monitor mode. There we go. And these are all the detects that it runs out of the gate. These are all numbers that correlate back to the MITRE attack technique matrix. And we're going to go through and test them right now. All right, so we're going to go into the Atomic Red Team directory. Just a little happy little copy and paste here and there. There we go. I know no songs that involve copying and pasting, which is a little bit bummer. That's already installed on this VM. We're going to import the module, invoke Atomic Red Team. There we go. And now we're going to run it, but we're going to run it different than what the lab says. The lab says, go ahead and invoke them all. And that's fine. I don't really have a problem with that. It just takes a really long time for it to execute all of these scripts. So what I'm going to do is do it a little bit different. We're going to invoke the Atomic Red Team, but we're going to do it on very, very specific tests. So if we go back here, you can see these T numbers. I can put in that specific T number and I can paste it in here, and Atomic Red Team will test that specific technique. And we can go back to Bluespawn and we can see if it detected it. And it did, right? So we've got WinLogOn helper. It was able to detect it. So I know that I have coverage there. Awesome. Let's go ahead and check on port monitoring. Can it detect port monitoring? So let's go ahead and test that. Oops, that's not what I wanted. Let's hit up arrow, then do that. There we go. And it says I don't even have a test for it. That's okay. It means that Atomic Red Team doesn't have a test for it, but we're going to note that and say, hey, we don't know if our EDR can detect port monitoring because we don't have a test for it. But we do have one for accessibility features. So with that one, let's go ahead and run that and see if there's a detect associated with it. There we go. We come on back. Did it detect? No. So now we know that we have a gap in our security detection strategy for our EDR. We know that an attacker, if they're running accessibility features, we're going to miss that. So we've got to either talk to the EDR vendor, work on an auxiliary signatures, something of that nature. Next one, logon scripts. Let's play that one a little bit. Let's go ahead and run logon scripts like so. There we go. Ooh, we're getting it. Logon scripts firing. Fired logon scripts. We go down here, and sure enough, it was able to detect it. So we can go through and evaluate our EDR tool so that we understand the gaps that exist in that EDR tool insofar as what it can and cannot detect. This is an incredibly powerful technique that you can use every single place that you work. It's whether it's SentinelOne, whether it's CrowdStrike, whether it's any of these products, you can evaluate that product. Why? Because we need to be looking at computer security through overlapping fields of visibility. Do we have the ability to detect things properly at the endpoint? Do we have the ability to detect things with UEBA and log and SIM analysis? Do we have the ability to detect network traffic with tools like Rita, Zeek, and AC Hunter? Because the more of these different overlapping fields of visibility we have in our organization, the better we are at detecting things. And the big reason why I want to put this in your hands as SOC analysts, as budding young security professionals, is because you can't effing trust the man. If you're looking at what's going on in the industry, there's all of these evaluations, AV evaluations. You got all of these different magazines and websites online that are evaluating these different products. And it's one huge nightmare because the interest in most of the organizations that are doing these things is not giving you valid advice about these products, but making sure that the vendors continue to pay them money. Now, MITRE is not necessarily like that. I just want to get that out front before we get through this section. But when MITRE did its evaluations of all the different security products, they insisted on not doing a stacked ranked analysis, number one. And the other thing is they allow the vendors to come in and tune their product, which sucks. That's just not a valid test right there. And three, they allow the vendors to incorporate their MSSP detection capability on top of what the product does. Let me explain why that's bad. You see, if you're buying a product, right? If you're going through and you are saying, I want to run CrowdStrike, just say that. CrowdStrike has CrowdStrike, the product, okay? They have the product. It's funny. MITRE is not for profit. So's the NFL. So when you're looking at some of these vendors and some of these companies and some of these organizations, don't get sucked into it's a nonprofit or not for profit. And I'm not accusing of MITRE trying to get money, but really what MITRE is doing is trying to make sure that the vendors play with them. And in order for the vendors to play with them, they also insist that there's certain rules, like don't stack and evaluate our products. They say we need to tune our products. We need to incorporate the MSSP of it. And that's a problem. All right. That's a problem in the industry because you buying CrowdStrike is not the same as you buying CrowdStrike and getting their MSSP. And the real kicker is you buying CrowdStrike with their MSSP is not the same as their MSSP and what they do for MITRE. And I'm not just ripping on CrowdStrike. The same thing goes for Sentinel, same thing goes for RSA, same thing goes for Sophos. They are watching the test very, very carefully. All right. So, Cyber Ronin, do you think that all of these vendors will give more or less care and feeding to the evaluation that MITRE is doing than you as a customer? Yeah. Yeah. Right. So we've got a problem. All right. Event viewer alternative for Linux. If you want to get really good event logs, you can run Sysmon for Linux. Just somebody could put that GitHub repository. Microsoft has created Sysmon for Linux, which is awesome. So check it out. All right. So what happened after these tests, because they didn't go through and stack and evaluate all of these different products, a gentleman by the name of Josh Linus did, and he works at Forrester, I believe, works with Forrester. And he created kind of a quick and dirty evaluation. This was at the beginning. And you can see that there's a huge discrepancy of the DTECs of these different tools, right? McAfee got 268. That seems high. Carbon Black's at 259. That seems about right. Cyber Reasons at 285 seems about right. Microsoft at 195. That's way low than what they're doing now. Palo's at 329. That seems a bit high. RSA is at 78. Seems a bit high. But yeah, you have these different stacked evaluations, right? Now, what did they miss? So this is also important on what are the different DTECs and the things that they missed as well. We already did the Blue Spawn lab, but the other thing that I want to tell you is a lot of these evals is not necessarily built to detect real techniques of real attackers. They're built around detecting the tools. So years ago when they did their first test before it was public out there, BHIS was using tools like Cobalt Strike. We still use Cobalt Strike. It's a great tool. I have nothing against Cobalt Strike at all. But all of a sudden, overnight, every AV vendor was able to detect Cobalt Strike and everything that was done with Cobalt Strike. And also PowerShell Empire. We're like, what the hell? It's as though God came out and said, I'm going to smite Cobalt Strike instances in particular. What happened was MITRE was using Cobalt Strike. MITRE was using it. They were using not Atomic Red Team. They were using PowerShell Empire for their evaluations. So all the vendors got really, really good at detecting Cobalt Strike. We just simply moved our implants over to our own custom implants, and another one, God, it's by Marcello. What is it? Silent Trinity. And we were able to bypass things again. So my point on all of this is these evaluations are important, right? But the most important evaluation that you can do is your own. Yes, Cobalt Strike is amazing. It's a very, very solid product. It works really, really, really well. But there are a lot of detects out there for its specific modules. If you know how to modularize and create new modules, create buffs, create obfuscation in Cobalt Strike, its effectiveness goes much, much, much further. Right. So let's talk a little bit about EDR and then get into another lab, because yet again, lots of labs. All right. So endpoint detection and response can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people, right? Does it include prevention, black box flight recorder? What do we have as far as source, security orchestration and automation and response? What about XDR? Is that all marketing propaganda? Yeah, pretty much it is. All right. So let's keep going. And the vendors. There are so many vendors in this space. I'm always amazed at the number of vendors that reach out to me and they're like, hey, John, we've got this new product that we've got private equity funding in. We're sinking $20 million into it. It's a new EDR product that's using proprietary artificial intelligence algorithms, and we'd like you to evaluate it and get a write-up. It's like two things about that. First, Google me first. I'm not the January 6th insurrectionist. The second thing about that is no, like, this is ridiculous. And let's throw in a third. You're going to lose. If you're in the EDR market and you're not like at Microsoft, CrowdStrike, SentinelOne level, you're going to get your ass kicked. And the reason why is artificial intelligence and all of these different things are based on the amount of data you can feed through the system for its large learning models and learning what is normal and learning what is malicious. Microsoft has billions of systems. SentinelOne and CrowdStrike and a lot of the vendors listed here have millions of systems. If you're a little startup that's spunky and you got a PhD, you're going up against people that have billions of dollars of R&D. They have billions of systems coming in to train their models. You're going to lose. Keep going. All right. So we talked about the MITRE evaluations, and I think that there is some value, but I really wish that MITRE would hire like really good pen testing firms like Trusted Sec, Bishop Fox, Red Siege, Secure Ideas, Black Hills Information Security, and say, go, be free, destroy these tools for 2-3 weeks and get back to us. That would be amazing. That's never going to happen, like ever. All right. Also, let's remember vendors lie. Like a lot. Like a lot. Oh, by the way, if you ever get a quote from a vendor, don't ever accept their first dollar amount. Wait a couple of months for a follow-up email from their salesperson. Wait for them to get panicky, because when they get to their quarterly sales goals, they'll drop the price sometimes by 50%. The more you know. All right. So why EDR? Well, EDR is actually really cool, way better than signature-based antivirus. I think EDR is actually a good thing in the industry. Without it, EDR is an absolute nightmare, right? Getting information from multiple different services, correlating attack data with good, solid threat intelligence, and honestly, Windows logs without Sysmon suck. Really, really, really bad. Now, I'm going to cover some free and some open source tools, and we're going to cover Velociraptor for a wide variety of reasons here in just a couple of moments that are out there. But I'm not a fan of vendors that don't have a free open source or a trial version of their tool, right? And the reason why is a lot of times you have to get it so embedded in your environment before you can make a determination that you have the sunk cost premise that we've already got them so far in our environment. I guess we've got to go with them now. And I hate that. I like vendors that are like, hey, you want to run it for free? Check it out. What are some vendors that do that? Huntress. Huntress is awesome. Huntress is literally giving their tool away for free to MSPs to protect themselves. Like, that's brilliant marketing, right? Elastic has the ability to run their tool for free. What is another one? Lima Charlie. You can run Lima Charlie for free for a series of months. That's awesome. Waza is a great tool. Actually, it's awesome for the fact that it's open source and it's free, but they have a commercial offering with it as well. So lots of really cool things that you can do. We already mentioned Waza. Do not refer to Waza without saying Waza, because the people at the sales team of Waza love it when you do that. All right. But it is so cool. If you are dropped into an environment and you absolutely have to secure that environment with no budget, Waza is going to be the tool you're going to go with. It is just going to be that tool. Comes up the most in my classes. People love using the tool, and it's a great tool to learn all the different things that you need to know. I don't run it in this class because the resources for getting a Waza server are a bit much. And I've talked to the people at Waza. Of course, they're like, well, it's not that bad. I'm like, for 1,000 students, they're like, oh, God, that would suck. Yeah, that would be, that would be a lot of CPU cores, and that would be super expensive to do when we're doing pay what you can on it. Waza has great analysis, not just for attacks, but also giving you vulnerability information. I'll get to Elk here in just a couple of seconds. Vulnerability information and kind of breaking it down. Also has the capability of great charts for malware detection, and it can look at things like Docker instances as well. Yeah, and TryHackMe has some trainings for Waza as well. The tool we're going to be using in class, this is Waza. Waza versus Alien Vault. No, yeah, that's not, no. Waza all day long. All day long, every day. Sorry, I said I wasn't going to rip on any vendors except for Alien Vault. I have not had a lot of good luck with Alien Vault. A bunch of my friends started SOC services. They went with Alien Vault because they were cheap, and it turns out it was a disaster. I have don't use Alien Vault. All right. So in our lab that we're going to be doing, we're going to be playing with Velociraptor. Velociraptor is not a full EDR. It doesn't have the capability of stopping malware execution, but it has EDR-like functionality where you can query systems, query processes, query services, query open files, pull that all back and do offline analysis. We're going to have a lab coming up or not a lab, we're going to be having a workshop coming up where we're going to be running Velociraptor in a workshop and showing you how we use it at Black Hills Information Security on our incident response team as well. So it's coming. There's a lot of other vendors that have free and open source tools out there. And once again, I want to call some of them out. I think it's really cool. And specifically, I'm going to talk about Elastic and Komodo. So Elastic purchased Endgame, which was a pretty solid EDR in its own right. Elastic is part of the Elk stack, Elastic, Logstash, and Kibana. BHIS, the security stack, is built on the Elastic ecosystem because we've got a bunch of ingesters for a bunch of other AVs. It's very, very flexible, works with a ton of different tools. It's really, really super cool. So check it out. Very easy to install. Super simple. You just download the agent, you run the agent with an enrollment token, and it automatically ties it into your environment. Right. So out of the box in 5 minutes or less, you can be doing full malware detection with Elastic Agent. It's just very, very slick. Also, we have a lab right here for Elastic and for Lima Charlie. So if you want to play with something in the real, you can do Elk in the cloud, and it'll walk through Elk in the cloud, establishing Elastic Agent, and Sysmon with Elk. If you want to play with another commercial vendor, we have labs for Lima Charlie and Lima Charlie with Atomic Red Team. So you can do all of those. Super easy to do. All right. So let's talk about Komodo. I threw Komodo in here because they're like straight mad lads. So Komodo has their open EDR, which I think is cool. It can integrate in with an Elastic stack. Pretty cool, and full source code out on GitHub. Gotta love that. But the reason why I'm talking about it is because the marketing at Komodo is like on point. If you look closely at this alert that is generated in their marketing propaganda, it has this. It says, here's the process hash. The process path is user's public Splunk daemon. Yeah, they literally called out Splunk as malware. No, no, no. Just so you know, totally not a fluke. If you look deeper, they have this one that is Elastic Agent as malware. Just, just, I'm not even mad. Like, props. Okay. So once again, false positives. There is no such thing as false positives with your SIM. There's no such thing as false positives with your EDR. You need to go through and tune your signatures to get you the appropriate detects that you should be looking for in your environment. All right. So I don't post this out enough on Twitter, but I need to. So when companies get started running alerting, they get an alert from their SIM and they freak out. Like everyone's panicking. This is the panic scale for John Strand. If I get a single repeating alert, I genuinely am interested, but I don't care that much. This isn't malware. So if I get an alert on a DLL that's triggering every hour or 5 minutes, more than likely that's not malware. That's a detection tuning opportunity. That means I need to go through and either filter or create a modification to that rule to make it work. All right. Now, if I start getting multiple different alerts, like who am I, let's say who am I, and I'm getting cert util and I'm getting weird DLLs being invoked. Oh, now I'm interested. Now I'm interested. If I'm getting multiple different alerts in conjunction with network level lateral movement, like net1, net use, net users, net view, now I'm absolutely freaking out. You have malware on that system. Almost guarantee it. If that is happening on multiple systems, get ready because you're going to have a bad 24 to 48 hours. Right. So looking at these things is really, really, really important for you to kind of look at it and say, these are the things that you should be looking through. Once again, this all goes back to architecture. You need to have multiple overlapping fields of visibility on each of your assets for detection. All right, let's get to that Velociraptor lab. So in this lab, we're going to be running the Velociraptor. And I chose Velociraptor over Waza because it's a very lightweight install with a very small executable and a very quick installation path to get it up and running, right? So you're going to go in and extract the Velociraptor binary. You're going to extract it to this current directory. Then you're going to open up your terminal as administrator, open up a command prompt, move into intro labs, and we're going to go through the process of installing Velociraptor. The vast majority of the prompts that you see here are just going to be the defaults. There's one prompt where it asks for a password to give for the account to log into the GUI. Please give it a password. Don't give it a password of blank. It can be one, it can be a password, it can be 1, 2, 3, 4. Give it something. Don't make it a blank password. All right. Then you're going to connect your Velociraptor system, which is your workstation, up into the Velociraptor instance. And then you're going to run a series of commands against your workstation to just kind of see what we can query. Now we're running it against an individual workstation, but the point of this is you can run it against the individual workstation, but you can also run it, all of these commands and all of these things that we're doing against multiple workstations in unison. Oh crap, there's bait. Yeah, security is hard. There you go. All right, so that is the lab. This lab is yet again going to take us up to and through the break. So we're going to give it till 35. Let's put 35 minutes on the clock. That gets us a 10-minute break. Gives us some time to get this set up, and then I'll do the walkthrough. We'll talk about vulnerability analysis, and then we're going to get into a really cool little web app pen testing lab to close out the course. So get rolling, and I'll see you on the other side of the no bandwidth musical half hour. So the first thing that we have to do is we have to go into the intro labs directory and we have to extract the Velociraptor executables. The reason why is GitHub only allows files of a certain size to be uploaded, and Velociraptor is just a hair over that size. So I had to compress it down so we could do a full GitHub pull on it. So I'm going to go ahead and extract here. Yes to all. There we go. Now we have the Velociraptor executables in place, which is awesome. So now we can continue on the instructions. So we're going to open up a command prompt and we're going to CD into the intro labs folder. There we go. And then we're going to start the process of installing Velociraptor by creating the config. So this creates the server config, and then we will generate client configs next. So we got that config. And we're going to stick with the defaults, right? We're going to do Windows. We're going to let it install Windows temp. We're going to do self-signed certificate. We're going to keep it blank for DNS, local host. GUI is going to listen on port 8889. We aren't using Google domains. Just keep that GUI username. Oops, did I just screw up? I think I just bypassed right over the GUI. We can generate a user later. All right. Put the logs in the temp log directory, and it's going to kick out the server config and the client config, and we be done there. Awesome. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a user with an administrator role on this system. The name of the user account is root, and whoa, there we go. And I'm going to put in the password of Tor because I'm old school. There we go. So we added in a root user with a password of Tor. And then we're going to run the MSI. Now, the MSI, what it does, it actually installs all the proper config and all of the different program file directories so that Velociraptor is now installed. I know that we have the binaries, but there's a difference between, yes, I know that everyone can see my screen. Zoom is getting weird on me. All right, now we're going to start up the server with the config that we created up above. There we go. There we go. So now we have the server is up and running. And now we can surf to the GUI and we can get logged in. We're going to get an SSL certificate error whenever we do this. And that's just because we're running a self-signed certificate is what's going on here. So I'm going to open up Microsoft Edge. And we are going to type in the clipboard text. All right. Click down here. Oh no, I completely hit the wrong thing. Just give me a second. There we go. Make this a little bit smaller now. Go to advanced. And we're going to continue because it's unsafe. I'm going to put in the username of root and the password of Tor. There we go. All right, so we're logged into Velociraptor, but at this particular point, we don't have any client connected into Velociraptor. So we have to actually go into the intro labs directory in a second command prompt to have the client access into the Velociraptor server. So we're going to run the MSI. Following the instructions, copy and paste them. And then we are going to run the client with the client config. There we go. And you can see the server is getting connection, and you can see that the client is making the connection into the server. So now we should be able to go into the Velociraptor webpage and do actual work. So I'm going to kind of make things a little bit smaller so we can see things a little bit better. And I'm going to click on home, and we should be able to see some clients. There we go. So we have our connected client right here. If I select that client, I can now run commands against that client by running shell. So I don't want to run PowerShell, but let's go ahead and let's run cmd.exe. And let's go ahead and run task list like that. And we can launch that against our system. And it takes a few moments for it to run, but we can actually see the results of the task list command. So I can do task list, I can do task list space / SVC, launch that, and I can get the results of those commands. There we go, it's back. So now we can see all that. Task list space / M. And once again, the coolness of this isn't that I can run task list against a computer system. But the coolness about this is that I can run this command against multiple different computer systems at the exact same time. In fact, we can do something like create a hunt where we can run it against multiple computers, all at the exact same time. And we can get the output in a text file format, that's CSV, so we can import it into a database. So I'm going to do just, let's do generic PS tree. So we've got that. So we're going to select that as our artifacts. So we have that ready to go. So we have our artifacts set. So let me select that. Oh, where was it? Generic PS tree. That's the one. All right. So we can set that. Oops, I clicked it one too many times. Configure the parameters. We can add more things into it. Specify resources. Review the actual code that's being sent, and we can launch it. And with this, I can select it and click launch, and then run that hunt. Run that hunt. Do, 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 do. All right, so now it's executing the hunt. You can see the little hourglass means that that hunt is executing. And then here in a few moments, that hunt is going to complete, and then we'll be able to download the results of us doing PS tree and the on my computer system. And you can go over and you can check those results coming over. You can see it's sending data, and you can see that the server is receiving data from that system. But it takes a little while for it to actually pull. Finish clients, that's great. I can pull down the CSV of the data as well. Let's do full download. And then I can select that, and then we'll unzip it, and then we can open it with Word. So we have what is the processes on this particular computer system. Open it up in WordPad, and it should pop up here in a second. There we go. So here's all of our processes on the computer. Now, this looks really complicated, but it's actually in a format. If you remember when we were working with our log analysis section of this class, it is really powerful because it's comment delimited. It gives us the capability to load it up into a database, and it gives us the ability to parse through things from multiple different computer systems all at once. And that's really what a good EDR should do. An EDR should give you the capability of just not looking at let's say, one system, but it allows us to look at all of these different things. Also, thank you very much, Coco. It has KAPE capability. This is, oh God, what's the name of the guy that came up with KAPE? Ugh. I keep forgetting his name. And it sucks because I taught with him for years at the SANS Institute. Um, I feel awful. Eric Zimmerman is the one that created it. And what KAPE does, and the reason why it's so cool in Velociraptor, is whenever you're doing an incident response forensics engagement, many times you're pulling off specific artifacts off of a system that you can start analyzing before you dump the entire hard drive and dump the entirety of the memory. So KAPE is basically a subset of the most important things that you need for IR that you can pull and start doing analysis while you're doing a more complete pull on that computer system. So KAPE is just amazing. And Velociraptor has that ability as well. All right. All right. So vulnerability management. In a lot of ways, and like I said, the last section of the class, we're going to get to a lab. But no, we use Nessus. We use it all the time. It is not irrelevant, not even by any stretch of the imagination at all. However, one of the other vulnerability scanners that is quickly catching on is nuclei. So this is the nuclei. Oh, did I go to the wrong place? Yep. I totally did. All right, so here we go. This is the nuclei vulnerability scanner, and I am going to, I'm probably going to redo the Nessa stuff with nuclei instead because nuclei is pretty cool. And it seems to be faster. It's just nice. All right. So at any rate, so a lot of what we do in vulnerability management is truly the same thing that we were doing over 10 years ago. Vendors really haven't changed with the times, and the vendors hate it when I say that. They're like, well, we've added in some next generation AI on top of that in a single pane of glass and predictive vulnerability analysis for our customers. And I'm like, everything you just said means that you don't know what you're talking about at all. And it means that you're not really doing much in the world of vulnerability scanning, but it sounds cool from a marketing perspective, and it would probably look good on a billboard for people that don't do this for a living. So why do I say that? Because everybody is trying to focus on prioritization. You get so many vulnerabilities out there, and it's like, well, we need to know which vulnerabilities we should patch. And I kind of want to go through this because it's insane, right? So what everybody wants is they want a vulnerability scanner to scan, identify the vulnerabilities the attackers are most likely to go after. And if it could be done in such a way where it focuses on the vulnerabilities attackers in a certain market vertical go after, we want to focus on that. Because clearly the attackers that are attacking retail exploit completely different vulnerabilities than the attackers that are going after banking and finance, which is completely different than the attackers that go after DoD or banking or bicycle shops. Because all of these hackers have their own little tribes and their own little groups, and they'll never use vulnerabilities that other hackers would do because those are rival hackers. Warriors come out to play, right? That's not how this works, all right? God damn it. All right, so understand that an attacker is going to go after any and all vulnerabilities that you give them. Okay. It doesn't matter, oh, that's one that's used in retail, Dimitri. No, any vulnerability you provide to them are going to be a vulnerability that they're going to go after. It doesn't matter about your market vertical. It doesn't matter if they're an APT group. And what MITRE says, if you have a critical vulnerability that is exploitable on the outside of the environment, the attacker is going to go through that vulnerability. All right. That's what's going to happen. So what many organizations do, which is dumb, and it's not like, gee, you're an idiot. It's like, God, why have we been doing it this way? We've been doing it wrong. Is they'll focus on prioritizing the critical vulnerabilities, then they'll go to the highs, then they'll go to the mediums, and they're just going to ignore the lows and the informationals. But truly, you need to understand that Black Hills Information Security, we tend to exploit those informationals and lows. I'll give you some examples of what that's like here in just a little bit later. So when we're looking at these lows, there are blind spots. An example would be this. We had a vulnerability scan we did against an energy company in India, and they had hundreds of telnet servers, just like a lot of telnet servers. And those telnet servers were basically giving us the banner in our vulnerability scan output. So it was login, 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 mushroom, mushroom, login, 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 router. It's a router. Login, 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 login. Now, whenever you see router at the bottom of the screen, what does that mean? What does that mean? If we see a router prompt, it means it's a console interface. It means it's a router that we can access with zero password cracking, no credentials whatsoever. We can walk straight into that router. And this is a vulnerability that tends not to show up as a critical or a high. So we take advantage of that. Log files being exposed, backup files being exposed. Like that's not something that a vulnerability scan will find and say, hey, this is bad. We find a .bak file, and we have all of these different server-side includes that we can gain access to, like, oopsies, there's the password for the database. Dang, right? So all of this are like things that are just lows. So when we're trying to go through this, the vast majority of organizations do not address low and informational issues. They absolutely ignore low informational level issues. So here's the wrong way to do this, right? Let's say you have 1,000 IP addresses in your environment, and we're looking on an average of about 25 vulnerabilities per system. That's 25,000 issues. And the problem is customers go to vulnerability scanning companies and they're like, look at this. It's 25,000 vulnerabilities. How are we going to go through 25,000 vulnerabilities? Tell us which ones to go after first, Nessus. Tell us which ones to go after first, Rapid7. Please tell us which ones the attackers are going to hack. Like somehow Tenable and Rapid7 have these people floating in liquid that can see into the future and precog. They can tell you which vulnerabilities the attackers are going to go after, right? No, that's not the way you do this. This way is almost always wrong. Instead, what I recommend is that you focus on grouping issues by vulnerability, not by IP address. Why? Why do I recommend doing it this way? Because if we focus on vulnerabilities, you have fewer vulnerabilities than you have IP addresses. And those vulnerabilities tend to live on multiple different IP addresses. Let me give you an example. Let's say SSL cipher suites. It sucks. It's a horrible vulnerability. Don't really spend much time worrying about it, but it's going to show up in your vulnerability scan. It's going to have to be something you have to take care of for PCI. And frankly, it sucks. But if you have a 5,000 server farm of web servers and they all have that vulnerability, you shouldn't be figuring out how to address that vulnerability on each individual server. You should be trying to address that vulnerability on all 5,000 systems through automation. So this allows you to take care of one vulnerability in mass across multiple different systems in one shot. So we call this like an open source technique. I'm faculty at IANS. Just give you an idea, Black Hills Information Security, we have scanned environments that have 1 million live IP addresses. And my team, using this technique, we can address and analyze all vulnerabilities across 1 million live IP addresses, critical, high, medium, and lows, and we can do it with 2 testers in 2 weeks. This doesn't have to be hard. This doesn't have to be difficult. You simply stop sorting your vulnerabilities by IP address. You sort the vulnerabilities based on the plugin ID, and that plugin will say these 500, these 5,000 systems are vulnerable to this attack. And honestly, if we're going to be completely blunt, external facing vulnerabilities are a very small aspect of the MITRE attack technique matrix. There's a lot more that we can do there. So we go back to what we were discussing earlier. You can do threat emulation, right? You can go back to Atomic Red Team and you can start addressing these other vulnerabilities and making sure the logging exists in your EDR and in your SIM to be able to detect these attacks post-exploitation. All right, so we're going to skip over the Nessus scan review because it's got to be updated. Okay, so here's my problem. Maybe you all can help me. Trying to come up with Nessus scan results of a substantial number of IP addresses is like super, super, super difficult to deal with. Yeah, Windows logs by default, Roswell UK are bad. Enable Sysmon. Sysmon logs are much better, and that'll take care of the blind spot for you. All right. So I was kind of thinking of scanning Russia with Nessus, and that would be the vulnerability report that we would look at in this class. But there's part of me that feels like that could be dumb. Like that might get us into trouble, possibly. So I have no idea if we should do that or not. Yeah, none of you guys are really encouraging me to do healthy things. I think you guys are all encouraging me to do bad things as well. So yeah, I love it. Do it. Do it. Maybe North Korea, because clearly nothing has ever bad happened from people that go after North Korea. All right, so let's talk about security in the SDLC, and then we're going to go through and have a quick lab working with Z attack proxy. Vulnerability scans are vulnerability scans, but for a number of you, you want to get a job in a SOC, but often the SOC position can be a stepping stone to something else. It can be a stepping stone for incident response. It can be a stepping stone into doing vulnerability analysis. And one of those stepping stones that I want you all to get into is doing vulnerability analysis in web applications, because we don't have enough people that know how to do basic web app scanning and web app scanning analysis as well. And it seems like it's really expensive because training is expensive. We're trying to change that. We have a really cool training class by BB King, Mr. the King. We'll get that link out here as well. But it's really kind of the training class that every web app pen tester at Black Hills Information Security has to do. They have to do it. So software development life cycles are really focused on continuous builds, continuous improvements, continuous releases. This may apply to custom applications that your organization writes, but it also could apply to applications your organization uses. You should be regularly doing web app scanning against the web apps that you create and the web apps that you use as well. You should be doing both of them out there. So let's go ahead and let's keep going. But I hear from people all the time that security is hard. And I feel bad about that because I feel like this is something the security industry has pushed on the universe to make it look harder than it actually is. I want to be honest, any job you do, you get to a certain level of it is difficult, right? But whenever you're looking at computer security and the basics, the Pareto principle exists. And if you're listening to a bunch of elite hackers that are trying to keep information security elite, like, oh, well, you got to know how to write buffer overflows and things like that. That's just dumb. Don't listen to those people. Don't be trying to party with wizards and trying to impress other wizards, okay? We need to be looking at computer security in the 80-20 and what is the maximum amount of pressure that we can bring with the most people with the least amount of training. And that's what we're trying to do here as well. So security doesn't have to be hard. A lot of the vulnerabilities that you see out there are vulnerabilities that are easy to identify. Like whenever you hear a website getting hacked, it's almost always very easy to identify SQL injection or command injection vulnerability or cross-site scripting as well. So there's a lot of things to test. Many of the tools are so easy to use. You should be running them nightly at a minimum, if at all possible, right? We should absolutely be doing that. And yes, we already said Sigma. We had an entire slide on Sigma. So that one is out there. I don't know if I mentioned my mom's name yet. I don't know if I did mention my mom's name. I don't know. I don't know. Oh, I did? All right, there we go. All right, so where and when should we actually be testing? Excellent. Rudy got it. Sigma is the Rosetta Stone. Awesome. Very cool. What can we test for? We can test for things like cross-site scripting, SQL injection, command injection, misconfigurations. This is over 80% of all of the different vulnerabilities that you hear about in the news. These are the things that you should be going after. These are the embarrassing things. Whenever you get compromised, that's like they didn't check for that. And there's free tools that check for that. Yeah, we should be working with those tools. And oh my God, my dog just farted. You alive, buddy? Okay. Not dead. No, no, just lay down. I just want to make sure you weren't dead. No, you don't. No, I don't have any hot dogs for you, buddy. Yeah, no hot dogs. Yeah, yeah. Okay. No, lay back down. You're fine. I just want to make sure you're alive. Okay. Wow. All right, there you go. So, all right. So, yes, we can find these vulnerabilities super easily in an environment, and tools can automate this as much as possible. Yes, diagonals count as well. But do these tools cover everything? No, they don't. Some of these tools will miss certain blind spots that exist in organizations. They don't get everything, right? They're going to miss logic errors. They're going to miss permission errors. They're going to miss stored cross-site scripting, cross-site request forgery. These tools require manual testing and they require a human being. And ultimately, that's what you want to work up to. You want to work up to being a penetration tester that has that capability to do that type of testing and do it well, because that's where you get paid. All right, so what tools do we have? A number of different fantastic tools. We have Burp Pro. It's not free, but it's super cheap. W3AF scanner, $0. Z Attack Proxy is going to be the tool that we talk about and we have a lab with here in just a little bit. Also, Nikto, Klaatu Bravada Nikto, is written by Chris Sulu, who works at Black Hills Information Security as well. These are all free. And if you know how to use these tools and you know how to use them effectively, a lot of these tools are more effective than tools that cost over $20,000, right? So we're going to focus on Zap. It's very similar to Burp. It's free. Strong development core, costs nothing. Has the ability to intercept and modify requests. It's free. Has the ability to do automated scanning. Did we mention it costs you nothing at all? So yes, you should be using Zed Attack Proxy. And that brings us to our lab where we're going to be doing web app testing. So we're going to do, yeah, let's do web log review because that'll get us started. Okay. So we're going to start a little mini, actually, no, let's not do this one. I've got to redo this. Let's do a different one. Let's do web testing. Let's do that one. Let's do web testing. I'm going to paste that in to everybody on the Discords and on the YouTubes so you can do it. So we're going to be running two separate web servers. The first part of the lab is the main part of the lab, but if you have more time, we have given you the instructions where you can do damn vulnerable web app and really dig in and learn about web application testing as well. So we're going to log into our VM. We're going to get our IP address. We're going to CD into intro labs. Your commands that you're running are going to be bold. And then we're going to run Python 3 damn small vulnerable web app, which is really, really basic. And then we're going to jump straight in and run an attack against it. So you're going to run that with Zed Attack Proxy. You're going to run it with Firefox Headless to do an attack against the system with an automated scan and look at the vulnerabilities. Now, if you have more time, you can do the optional damn vulnerable web app lab that has a full learning environment for learning tons of different vulnerabilities. So this is a great way for you all to get set up and get started. So with that, let's get rolling. If you need anything, please let me know.
I'm just going to jump in before John gets here and say thank you very much, everyone, for coming and joining us this week. Hope you come back again, and we look forward to seeing you.
Come on, camera. Yeah, all right, we got it. All right. Yes, I agree. And thank you so much for everything that you do for us, Brian, kind of keeping everything going. I know it's difficult coming back into the past from the future, but you do it with grace, sir. All right. So let's go through this lab really, really quickly. And then we're going to do closing ceremonies. I've got some stuff for you all. Megan, do we have a winner for the bingo?
Yes, we do.
Let's go ahead and let's talk about that person and let them know.
Okay. Well, by a random draw, the winner is Roswell, UK. Are you still here?
Ooh.
Yay! Yeah,
Awesome.
it's the second time. This is the second time they've played too, because I saw their bingo card from last time too. So congratulations. I will be DMing you in a few minutes and getting your information. Congratulations.
Congratulations to them. All right, thank you. All right, so let's go through this lab and we have more stuff. I have a discount code for clothing for you all at the Spearfish General Store. I'll be sharing that at the end as well. So I'm excited to get you guys some swag. We cover the cost of the shirt. You cover the cost of the shipping. And that's about it. All right. So we're going to CD into the intro labs directory and we're going to execute our little script, Python damn small vulnerable web app, like so. There it is. Awesome. It's running. There we go. So we've got it. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start Zed Attack Proxy. And Zed Attack Proxy is a vulnerability assessment scanner for web applications. It takes a little while for it to fire up, and we're going to have to go through some configuration settings. It's going to ask us to accept the certificate. All that stuff is fine. But we really love Zap. We need to get it updated. I'm actually thinking that we should support that project. Since they're no longer part of OWASP, they're their own thing. So it's going to pop up, show us the certificate, and we're just going to accept said certificate. Here we go. Oops, sticky, let it go. There we go. Let me click OK like that. No, I don't really feel like persisting it. So we're going to start that and we're going to maximize my screen. I don't want to update my Zap. We can do this and we'll maximize so we can see everything. And we're going to start out by doing an automated scan. And we're going to put in the URL of the server that we want to actually do the testing on, which is right here. So there we go. So we have the server at our Linux IP address at 65412. So I'm going to grab my IP address like this, and we are going to put it into Z attack proxy and paste it in. And colon 65412. And we're just going to go ahead and have it attack. All right. So now what it's starting to do is it's going to kick off crawling that particular website to identify the particular vulnerabilities that exist at that website. No, it's not identifying the vulnerabilities. It's enumerating all of the pages first. After it's done enumerating, it just moved into the active scan where it's actively trying to exploit that particular part of the website. Now, while it's going through and it's doing its attacking and all of its cool stuff, it's going to be generating alerts. It has cross-site scripting reflected attacks, which are neat. It also has a really cool directory path traversal. You can select on these vulnerabilities and it will give you the output of that vulnerability so you can see what it was able to detect, right? So if I go up here and I pull this down, you can see the request right here. And then you can see the response where it dumped out, okay, we were able to get the password file, PASSWD file out of that system. That's really, really, really cool. What else do we have? SQL injection. If we look at the SQL injection response, it says that SQLite 3 operational error, near, thir, syntax error. You should never get results back from the database itself. So we have all of these really cool vulnerabilities. And somebody said, Augie said, I need to educate. Yep. And that's fine. But what's really, really cool is this gives you an excellent place where you can learn what these vulnerabilities are. Now, the additional parts of this lab are for you to be able to go through and continue learning in Damn Vulnerable web app, which isn't a small one. It's a little bit bigger, has more vulnerabilities for you to play with. But it takes a while for it to set up. And it's all Docker, but all the vulnerabilities are there, so you can play with that. All right, so tons and tons of cool stuff for you all to play with and kind of get going in your career. But I've got one more thing for you all. Let me resume my share. This is a discount code for the Spearfish General Store. So right here, and this should get you a free shirt at the Spearfish General Store. I recommend this one, the Antisyphon training. If somebody could get a link for this particular shirt, this should be the it should be the shirt that gets you the discount code on it as well. So we are kind of at the point now, we've given you the discount code. We have the winner of the the full catalog of Antisyphon training. And we're not going to do Ask Me Anything at this point. We're going to do closing ceremonies. Somebody said, how long do you have access to the VMs? They'll probably stay out for like 2-3 weeks, and then I'll clear them out. But no, I just kind of get to it when I get to it. So there you go. So there's the code, and there's the Spearfish General Store. You pay shipping, I'll send you some free stuff. Rekka hats are gone. We'll restock those at some point. Okay. So I want to do a couple of things that is very much, the GitHub Labs will be up as long as I'm alive. So they'll be going. So I want you guys all to kind of know a couple of things. This is kind of like Saturday Night Live where they end and they have the sad, somber music and everyone's like, thank you for coming. And there's hugs. It's time for the closing ceremonies of Antisyphon's pay what you can classes. So a couple of quick notes about how all of this came about and why we think that this is really, really important. So we already mentioned that this came about during COVID, right? Like, we saw a need for training. We had a bunch of people that had downtime, and we set out to fill that need with the best possible training that we could possibly provide, and we did it. Now, how we got to that point, I didn't exactly tell you. When it first came out, we were discussing how can we get people that are underrepresented in computer security to get into computer security. And it got to kind of a weird conversation. Now, I want you guys to stick with me through this because where I'm going to start is going to be a bit weird, but I want you to stay with me till the end. All right. So initially, this started out, we were trying to figure out how to do discount codes for Wild West Hacking Fest to underrepresented groups in computer security. That would be women, African Americans, and all these different things. And this is the part where it gets uncomfortable. I really hate that. And I want to explain why. All right. I hate that because we get into like Native Americans, we get into Pacific Islanders, we get into people from impoverished parts of the United States, and we almost always can find people that need help. And it doesn't really matter whether they're, gay, they're straight, they're black, they're white, Pacific Islanders, purple hair, green hair, whoever they love. This is almost like this weird thing where if I choose a group to give scholarships, I neglect other groups for scholarships as well. So what we decided and what we identified is the main barrier for people getting into computer security, is money. Regardless of wherever you come from, that is the gating resource. Now, how you get to that lack of money can depend on a variety of different circumstances. It can be something as simple as you grew up in a impoverished part of the United States. It could be that you don't have that kind of historical generational wealth that's been built up, that you have people that can support you financially in your career path. But no matter what, it always comes down to money. Whether you're African American, Native American, whether or not you're a white person in South Dakota in flyover country that grew up dirt ass poor in the middle of the Black Hills, you still run into these problems. So we saw that as a gate, and we decided to burn the effing gate down. We do not care if you're black, white, purple, green, if you're gay, trans, straight, I do not care, because what we're doing here is we're making it available to absolutely everybody, regardless of their backgrounds. Because one of the pervasive myths that exists in America is that if somebody doesn't have money, it's because they're lazy. They don't have money because they're dumb. They don't have money because they've made bad life choices and they're dealing with those consequences. But I'm going to tell you that the more you get to know people in real America, the more you identify that those quote unquote poor people are people that are working 2 to 3 effing jobs just to feed their children. And they don't have the opportunity to get out of where they're at. And we decided to start burning those bridges down. And that's why when the Cyber Mentor does it, that's awesome. And that's why when the SANS Institute starts saying, here's some stuff that we can offer for free to the community, that's awesome. Let's start a movement for regardless of where you're coming from. You can get your foot in the goddamn door in a great career field, regardless of your socioeconomic status and where you actually come from. And that's what we set out to do. And that is what we have done. There are very few things in my life that are as rewarding as going to conferences and meeting people that are now in computer security and have health insurance for their kids for the first time. I had one lady that came up to me, tears in their eyes, hugging me, saying, I got a job in computer security. I got full health insurance for me and my family. And we discovered that my youngest kid had cancer. And because of having full health insurance, we were able not just to get cancer treatment, we were able to get top-notch cancer treatment and save my child's life. That shit hits different. And that's what we're trying to do here. So with this, I have a couple of groups that I want to call out. The first group that I want to call out are the people that paid. All right. There are people that paid for this course. The people that pay for this course, whether or not they're contributing or whether or not they're being willing to pay $100, $20, $50, I don't care. These people that show up make this possible. There is money behind making this possible. Okay, there is money. It takes money to get Zoom. It takes money to get Discord. It takes money to have all these people supporting and making this happen. And the people that paid for this course made that happen from a financial perspective. So please, if you could all give them a round of applause and give them your thanks because they make this happen. And I want to call that out. So please, once again, thank you so much for those of you that paid. And we're going to be changing the terminology. Instead of pay what you can, we're going to be moving it to pay it forward, because every person that pays isn't just paying what they can, they're paying to help somebody else get into this awesome industry. And that needs to be recognized. The other group of people, and we keep coming around to this, the other group of people that I want to call out are the people that didn't pay a dime. When we started this, I had a number of people that said, dude, you're going to have freeloaders. You're going to have people that show up and they just take advantage of you. You're going to have people that are going to pay nothing. And all that does happen. It does. But what I know from my childhood and what I grew up with, having blue collar parents, having a mom that worked in the lunch system, was literally a lunch lady in lunch lady land, and doing everything that she could to get her kids through school, living off of the leftovers from that school lunch program, where she would bring home these cans filled with leftover hamburger, filled with leftover spaghetti, filled with leftover stromboli, that sometimes we would eat for days because that was the only food that we had. I understand that a number of you are not paying because that's how you're living. You live paycheck to paycheck, literally, and you're not even living paycheck to paycheck. You're slipping behind every single goddamn paycheck. I know that there's those of you that are in this course that truly cannot afford $5, because that can mean the difference of getting your kid the shoes that they need so that they can play sports in school. I know, because that's where I came up. That's where I came from. And I am goddamn proud of my parents and what they were able to provide to me. But I also understand how hard they worked and how much every single dollar mattered. So those people came into this class. They paid nothing, but they paid with the one resource that they have, the one resource that is the only thing that counts whenever they're addressing their value to society, is their time. They are paid by the hour. They are paid in tips. They are paid in their time. And they decided to come here. They decided to be with us. They decided to be with me and Megan and Brian and the team that we have here. And that means there was a trade. They traded off time that they could spend relaxing. They traded off time that they could have spent with their family. They traded off time that they could have spent trying to recoup mentally and physically to be here to try to make themselves better. They didn't pay in dollars and cents. They paid in something that is incredibly precious. And with that, I want us all to give them a round of thanks as well, because this class and what we do is for those people that are trying to improve themselves. Granted, we help everybody, corporate America, MSSPs, all of these people, and that's great. We're going to help them out. But I'm going to tell you, you get one person that moves from a minimum wage job working hourly rate to the point where they have a career making $75,000, $80,000, $100,000 with health insurance. That is life-changing, not to that person and only to that person, but to their entire family and to their children. And I guarantee you it begins a generational change that happens for their children, their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren. So with that, we want to say thank you to all of you. And I have one small request as we close all of this out with, is it 70 people on YouTube and 250 people on Zoom. And those of you that made it here to the very, very, very end, help us amplify the signal. When we do this again, help us amplify on LinkedIn. Help us amplify on Twitter. Help us amplify by finding your nieces, your nephews, your cousins, your brothers, your sisters, your uncles, your aunts that have the aptitude to move into this career and kick ass. Because that is what we are doing. That is what we want to get out of this. And we appreciate it if we could get your assistance with that. So with that, I want to say thank you so much, everybody. Get out of here. And I can't wait to see you in another Antisyphon course. Take care, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, everyone. The certificates of completion for those of you that registered will be coming out overnight. So you should see those in your inbox tomorrow morning. Thanks again, everyone. Yuri, Ryan, it's time to kill it with fire.
Bye-bye, guys. All the best.